interviewed Jenny Bruner, and we felt like the most insightful part of the interview was how she talked about how Appalachia influenced her music.
I just love how the Appalachian music, reflects the landscape and reflects people's experiences. When I taught at a fiddle camp, I brought together all the fiddle tunes that were about animals, like Cluck Ol' Hen and Dancing Bear and all these different song titles, and how fiddle tunes, are just capturing a human experience.
We interviewed Charles Humphrey.
We enjoyed interviewing Charles Humphrey because we got to see a little bit into an Appalachian musician's life.
Well, I think living in this area has been a big influence. I've lived in the country, I've lived in the city, I've gone to things like the Mountain Folk and Dance Festival. I've been able to do various hikes and runs through the mountains, and I'd say that's influenced my songwriting.
Something we learned through our interview with Marie Cochran was what it was like to be an African American in Appalachia.
When I was growing up and I was about your age, as I, had friends in different places, especially in Atlanta and bigger cities, I would get teased a lot because they'd say, "Oh, you must be the only family in the mountains that's black." Because they had that stereotype that there weren't any black people that lived in the mountains. I think that shaped me because the first thing was that I was really aware of the fact that I was proud of where I was from. I didn't really think about it until I got older that I really wanted to do work about being from my small town in the mountains.
We interviewed Brent Manning.
When Brent Manning talked about the environmental impacts of non-locally made malt, such as high carbon emissions, higher prices, and how most of western North Carolina's barley goes to farm animals, it helped our group better understand why Mr. Manning started his business and how it helps bolster Asheville's local economy.
Riverbend has always focused as a triple bottom line company, meaning that we consider people, planets, and profit in every decision that we make, and that benefits the staff that works with us. It also benefits the farmers that we work with. So we pay a far above market rate for the high quality grains that they're producing. We're also shortening the transportation loop that's typically associated with malt. We kind of joked early on that the only thing local in this local beer that Asheville was trumpeting was the water. The hops come from the Pacific Northwest, and the malt was coming from Canada, Western U.S., and Western Europe. So we're making something truly local at this point.
We interviewed avid climber and raptorist Steve Longnecker.
He talked about how he climbed up the quote-unquote mummy.
Well, that's why the mummy's called a mummy, because it's supposed to look like a mummy if you look at the thing from the right angle, but most people don't. So this English fella, when he climbed one, they called it the Daddy. He climbed it because he thought the mummy was named after a mother. The mummy was actually named by the guy that climbed it first. I was on the trip, but he was the first one to get to I was the first one to get the top of it, but he was the first one he's the one that named it. He said, that looks like an Egyptian thing they put the mummies in. They call them sarcophagus. That's what I couldn't say it even now, but that's what they call them.
We interviewed Linda Block.
What we learned about Appalachian culture through Linda Block was that clogging was influenced by many cultures.
The way I understand the history of clogging is that it came from the Appalachian Mountains, and the influences came from Native American people who were here already in the United States, African American slaves who came here with their own style of dancing. Both of those styles are very much kind of lower to the ground, planted to the ground, flat foot on the ground dancing. And then influenced by Irish immigrants who came and had step dancing. Now theirs is a little more on their toes, but it's still percussion, making rhythms with their feet, and a little bit of Scottish immigrant influence. And I've looked at all those different styles of dancing, and you can see elements of clogging in all of them. So it's kind of a mixture of the styles that came here with the immigrants and with the native people who were here.
Nice! If you're making rhythm
feet.
We interviewed Miss Vivian Conley.
And that brings me to another story about my father. He was a very determined, self-willed person, and they said it was Rosa Parks, but actually it was John Conley that sat on the bus first, because when he would get on the bus, he would always, if there was a seat, he would sit in it. And so day after day, sometimes he would get to make it all the way home. Other days he would not get all the way home when the bus would leave. I don't know how familiar you are with the area, but downtown Asheville there's a section, it's called Pritchard's Park, and that's where you caught the bus. And he would get on there, but by the time he got to the top of Clayman, they usually were putting him off the bus because he was sitting in a seat that they you could only sit in the back of the bus, and so he would sit where he pleased, and they would put him off. And somebody would always get, when the bus got to Burton Street, someone would come behind the school, because we actually lived directly behind the school, and they would circle off the street and circle around and holler over and say, "Miss Conley, he's on the way, he's walking."
We interviewed June Carter and Alvin Lytle.
During our interview with June Carter and Alvin Lytle, we learned that culture is more of a lifestyle and less of something that you have to follow like direct rules about, and that you have to be a jack of all trades and a master of none.
So to be a farmer or to be in our industry in Appalachia, it's something we're extremely proud of, but it's a very hard task. It's a hard job, but like I say, you have to be jack of all trades, master of none. And there's no degrees. There's no degrees for this. Okay, you don't go hanging a certificate on the wall and say, "Hey, look, man, look, I'm an Appalachian farmer." No.
So by the time you get to that point, she'll bite you in the backside.
We enjoyed interviewing J.B. Williams.
Something we learned when we were interviewing J.B. Williams, well, we got a glimpse in the past and really started to understand what it was like in Appalachia a long time ago.
When I grew up, we didn't have a bathroom inside our house. We had an outhouse. When I grew up, we was not poor compared to the other people in the area, but we was poor. We didn't have a television until I was 7-year-old. You kids think when the internet goes down and your iPhone goes down that the world stops. It doesn't. We lived through it.
We interviewed Kate Lane.
We felt that the most insightful part of the interview was when Kate talked about how the land always wins in Appalachia, not the people, even when they fight it.
But this area is so rugged and tough and has gone through so much change and blood, and the land always wins here. And so we'll see, like in Madison County in particular, you'll see these like developments come in, and there'll be these like 50 million-dollar houses go in along the river, and then the economy will tank, and those homes slowly, like even though they're million-dollar homes, they start to go back to nature. Like it just happens so quickly.
We interviewed Jan Verhaeg.
We felt like the most insightful part of the interview was when Jan talked about the babies coming to and crying for the first time.
I'm sure there's many heartwarming experiences too. Could you tell us about one?
Oh, yes. I've known a lot of women who were terribly afraid and then birthed beautifully. I've had some babies that had to be resuscitated, only one or two, where we had to do the heart compressions and breathe for them, and they came around, they cried. The sweetest sound in the world is a baby crying, especially if you've been worried about it. So there were a lot of those. But there were about 2 that were so serious. But there were others that were a little slow to start up, as we say. And you could feel their little personalities and spirits kind of circling the room. And then when they take that first breath and they pink up, you feel them come into the body, and that is beautiful.
We interviewed Clarence Maccabee.
What we learned about Appalachian culture through our interview with Clarence was that many people had to farm all day, every day from a young age to survive in Appalachia, but liked to do it and had fun, and if something needed doing, you did it.
What'd you do for him?
Farm.
Mostly, right?
Plant corn, plow.
cut hay and everything else. Just regular farm duty.
How many cows did they milk?
I think it's about 60 or 80. You got to do it all when you're in farming. You can't.
He's never not farmed. Know that since he was
You
1 year old.
you can't do just one thing. If you see something needs done, you jump in there and do it.
And there's always something needs to be done.
Yeah, the only way you can do it is shut your eyes and go on.